Hello, my fellow webheads. It's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and I am here with you today for another issue of Amazing Spider-Man art to look at together. Today, we're going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man number 46. Fun issue with a brand new villain, and I'm very excited to review it with you. Of course, as always, I want to thank everybody for subscribing to the channel and for following this particular playlist of my Amazing Spider-Man reviews. If you're new to the channel, I have a lot of videos here, not just about the Amazing Spider-Man, but other art videos as well, talking about my process, tools, tips, tricks that I use in making my own comics. So if you're an aspiring artist or a younger artist, not only are these videos about the art of these early episodes or early issues of Spider-Man, these are great learning tutorials for you, but also I have some in here as well, talking about my own artwork and the things that I do to make comics. So I hope you, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification button. These videos about the Amazing Spider-Man do come out every Monday at 8 a.m. However, you do want to make sure you're notified in case of special events. We do live streams, and again, as I mentioned, other art process videos as well. So you don't want to miss those. So thank you again so much. If you are new here, there is a playlist that takes us all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man. Go ahead, check those out as well. So at this point, let's talk about this issue. And before we head over to the comic, I do just want to share my brand new Spider-Man sweatshirt that I got for Christmas this past year. So very excited to share this with you. And let's get over to the comic and check it out. Okay, so here we have the cover to the Amazing Spider-Man number 46. So I will preface this with something I do with every of these videos. This is a scanned PDF copy of the original comic from 1967. So in 2004, Marvel Comics got a hold of all an original issue from the entire Spider-Man run at that time, and scanned each one and put them out in a CD-ROM format. Later, they did it with other titles on DVD, so it was one disc, but this was the original, and it was multiple CD-ROMs. So this is what we're looking at. We'll see all the original ads, the page breaks, the everything as it was. So this is the cover, and as we've talked about, we are looking at writer Stan Lee still, and current artist John Romita. So one of the things that I noted when I started looking at this issue is this is the first time this corner box art has featured John Romita's Spider-Man. So up until this point, we still had the original Steve Ditko Spider-Man face in the corner box. And so I guess, I don't know if it was just easier from a press perspective to keep using it, if there was maybe still some thought that Steve might come back, and sort of holding out hope. But I think at this point, we've moved completely in the direction of John Romita is going to be the ongoing Spider-Man artist. And back in these days, unless a title got canceled, artists would stay for a really long time. And so there we go. So now we have John Romita art at the top. And I've talked about this in my past videos. You can see how he has really simplified that web design on Spider-Man. It keeps it consistent. It keeps it again simplified. So if you do have a fill-in artist or somebody that wants to do Spidey as a guest in another comic title, say like the Fantastic Four or Daredevil or something, again you have a very consistent model to work off of. Whereas the Steve Ditko Spidey had a lot more lines in the webbing, and it wasn't always as consistent. Certainly in the beginning of the run. And so here we have that very consistent Spider-Man face. Now, obviously, I've not addressed the elephant in the room, which is this new villain. We have the Shocker. And the Shocker is a character that has not always been looked at well by the fandom. I think the name, of course, is certainly something that people will joke about. The costume today, people, including Spider-Man, make fun of. They say he looks like a quilted mattress or things of that nature. But at the time, and when you look at this with the eyes of the first time seeing a villain, I think this is a great character. It's an interesting and different kind of power set. We're not seeing something we've seen before in terms of what Spidey has to face off against. Um, and we'll see in the or a little origin backstory of the Shocker how the costume actually makes sense. So I really like it. I think the cover is great. It has good action. It's a very nice composition with this pillar being destroyed, and it really emphasizes what the Shocker's powers are. He has these sort of blasts that are vibration, so it's wrecking the environment around Spidey, and we have all these little shake lines. Again, these are all different just symbols to represent things. We can't actually really show Spidey shaking. Now, actually, today, in today's modern comics, you could actually use your things like Photoshop to blur areas that would make it look like it's vibrating or shaking, right? So if we vibrate or shake something fast enough, it looks blurry in our eyes. We can do that with today's technology. Back in 1967, you couldn't. So the shorthand is little lines around something to make it look like it's shaking. That's the idea. And this has everything you need. And then the last thing I noted is you have this very monotone color background. Yeah, it's this gray, two-tone gray kind of background, which helps these characters really pop off the cover, which is exactly what you want, right? We want that eye to be drawn right to that center of action. Those two characters that are interconnected with sort of a triangular composition. Check out the previous videos in terms of me talking about different classical compositions that are used a lot throughout not just comics but all art. In this case, we have sort of a triangular composition. So great cover, works terrific, sells it. Brand new character who looks dangerous. Excellent. As we head to the page one in the splash page, I've said this a million times. You know, I love a splash page that jumps us into the story. And that's exactly what happens here. Spidey is still recovering from his injury fighting the lizard. So he has a sprained arm. Not sure if it's the shoulder or the elbow, but sprained left arm. And so he's has it strapped to his body to immobilize it. But that's not going to stop him. We see the shaking lines around the building is shaking. Little bits of masonry are falling off. Excellent. A really nice way to jump into it, that everything is shaking and Spidey is falling off the building. It's shaking so much. And then one of the things I did note here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to really emphasize it, is that I really liked the ink line, or what we would call the contour line, so that outline around the figure of Spidey being very, very dark, very thick, very bold. And so John Romita, the artist of the series, is not only penciling, he's also inking this issue, which he has done the past few. And I like this. You have a lot of detail in the background of the bricks, right? And the shaking lines. So if you had a thin line around Spidey, it's not going to emphasize the figure as much. But these thick lines really help him pop forward and create a little bit of depth between him and the building. So we know that he's not necessarily just stuck to it, that he's falling kind of in front of it. So really, really nice job there. I think it's terrific inking, and something I like to use in my own art as well. So I think that's an awesome inking job on this figure. Um, the other thing I've noted here as we've gone through, and as John Romita has become the artist and had more issues under his belt, is I feel like he's gotten a much better handle on how Spider-Man moves. And honestly, sort of having the character only have one arm, I think has really helped it's forced John to think about Spidey moving in a more acrobatic way, um, having to use his legs and agility, flipping, turning, etc. more, because you can't rely on, he can't just reach out with his right arm to grab something. He's got to flip around. So terrific stuff here, as he's grabbing this, looks like a lamppost, before he falls to the ground and swinging. And we see the Shocker. So the Shocker is robbing this bank, and um, introduces himself. Very nice poses of the figures, really using the space of the page. So, or the panel. So what I mean by that, right, is we have this nice wide panel in the middle to show the environment, to have Spidey there and the Shocker there and the vault and the money, so you get the whole image of what's happening. And we have Spidey swinging in from left to right and fairly horizontal. He's not perfectly horizontal, but using that horizontal space by having his arms and legs kind of in that position and his body kicked up. Really nice. Same thing here. We have a smaller square panel, but we're going to turn the camera a little sideways, a little bit of a Dutch angle. We also have that going on here. But then we have the Shocker, and the way that his body is postured allows us to use the corner to corner space of the panel, which is bigger. So you're using the most space you have in a square panel, to show his pose here, as he's going to use his vibration suit, his vibration technology against Spidey. So really nice ways of using and maximizing your space in each panel. This page is awesome. I really, really like it. Again, as I mentioned, I feel like this is John Romita getting a great handle on how Spidey moves in ways that are different than any other superhero. So he's been knocked from his web out of the air, and he lands on this one hand, just on the fingertips. The legs are counterbalancing because he can't use his other arm to balance. So you have this nice twist of the body, where his feet and head are outside of his waist. So this is something that I heard quoted. I don't have a link to the actual video itself, but you can check it out. So Jim Lee, former Marvel artist, DC executive, Image founder, does live streams on Twitch. And I've watched a number of them. He's my all-time favorite artist. And I've watched him answer questions for people. One of the things that he talked about is creating energy and movement in your figures. And one of the best ways to do that is to take the head and the waist. So if you draw for a spine that comes out, the center line of your head, right? Your spine, your neck connects to the center line of your head and goes all the way straight down a body. So if you have a person standing straight, your head, spine, the center of your hips, and your feet are all going to line up nice and horizontally. That is very static. It's very strong, but it's very static. If you want to create energy in that figure, you take the head and you take the waist and you move them apart as far as you can, and then reconnect. So that twists the spine, twists the legs, and that's exactly what's happening here. By having the head and the feet so far away from the waist of Spidey, you've created this really nice energy and motion in the figure, even though what he's doing is landing on the ground. Same thing here. So he's almost horizontal, but realistically, the ground is at his hand. And so sort of this would almost be more like his leg than it is his leg, right? Excuse me, his leg is acting like his hand, punching, or in this case, kicking the Shocker. So here, they're so far apart from each other, you have great energy. So just something to think about with your figures if you're an aspiring artist. Anytime you can move your head and your waist apart from each other and then connect that spine in there, your figure is immediately moving and has more energy. So terrific stuff here. Great fight scene. I love the figures moving. A lot of times I'm not a big fan of this. Here, we'll zoom into so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Just all this exploding lines of energy when it comes to punching and stuff like that. However, for the Shocker, I think it makes sense. The character is vibrating. His punches are coupled not just with strength, but with this vibrational energy. So I think it makes a lot of sense to me here to have these sort of lines. It works for what they're talking about. So that makes a lot of sense to me, and I like it in this case. Um, well, I'll get to it when we get the origin of the Shocker and the costume. We'll talk about that a little bit. Again, really nice stuff here. Spidey lurching forward with a nice punch, but because he has the one arm, he can't punch fast enough to disable the Shocker, and he's able to come in and hit him with a big two-handed vibration punch and punch him through the wall. Really, really good stuff there. Really nice imagery. And then again, using the horizontal panel here to emphasize that movement. So you have Spidey laying prone, the Shocker moving away. And again, notice how far apart the head, the waist, the feet, right? So that figure could be more straight up and down, and you just move the legs like he's walking away. But instead, by pulling the head, feet, and waist apart from each other, makes him moving in a more energetic, faster, more action oriented pose. So terrific, terrific stuff there. Really, really nice. And then this is really subtle, but Spidey, gets up a couple minutes later, recovers, goes to head out and grabs his camera at the window that he came in on. I like the black background. It's very simple, but the light outside is much, much brighter. So to me, this just sort of really worked. I didn't need all of the architecture around the window, that kind of stuff. It just seemed to really make sense to me that it'd be much darker on the inside and bright outside. So really nice. And then, of course, now Peter's trying to figure out what he's going to do. He's going to, he got some pictures, but he's gonna need his other arm for sure. What's he gonna do? And then Harry Osborn comes to talk to him and recommends that the two of them live together. So Norman Osborn, Harry's dad, has rented him an apartment near the campus where the two boys go to school, and Harry wants Peter to move in with him. I did note this as well. I don't like to get into too much in the way of things like politics or stuff like that in this video series. That's not what we're here for. We're really here to talk about the artwork. However, I did want to point this out. So again, this comic was made in 1967. So we are in the midst of the civil rights movement, and to have an African American police officer in New York depicted as just basically a framing piece, right? We don't want to just be on the faces of Peter and Harry as they talk. We want to show their environment. And we could have included anybody. It could have been a stranger, could have been a pedestrian, could have been whoever. But to show an African American man in a position of authority in New York at the time was very meaningful, right? And it wasn't done in a heavy-handed kind of way. It wasn't done in a way to push an agenda one way or the other. It just was. And if you don't know the context of the time that this comic was made, if you look back on it today, you would go, okay, there's this cop here. Maybe the cop will be a character later. I don't know. You wouldn't even think about it. But I think it's an interesting take. It's a statement that Stan and John are making, probably even more so John. I don't know that this would have necessarily been written to the script, but this is how an artist would frame this piece and try to, again, come up with interesting ways to have two people talking in a car. I think it was important, and it's nice to see. And again, just sort of frames all this again in a function of the times. So something to take a pause at, think about, and what these guys were doing here in, again, 1967. Oops. And so we have back to Frederick Fosberg, Foswell. I always say Fosberg. Foswell character. So again, at one time he was a wannabe crime lord, um, and did his jail time and has come back to working for the Daily Bugle. And he has suspicions about Peter, some whatever the connection is between Peter and Spider-Man. He doesn't know what it is. He knows there's a connection. So we have just again a lot of talking heads. Nothing super exciting going on here at the moment. This character is Foswell in his disguise. So he disguises himself as this character Patch with a rubber mask and stuff, and that's how he kind of gets tips from other criminals and can kind of mix in without anybody knowing that he's a reporter, and he wants to follow Peter around and figure out how he always gets these pictures of Spider-Man. So now we cut back to the Shocker as he's going to his lair. I like this image of him pouring out the bag or the briefcase full of money and all the bills. Um, you know, I know a lot of artists today that would spend a ton of time referencing what certain money images are on the money and trying to draw it excuse me, perfectly accurate. It doesn't need to be. We know it's green, it's stacked, it's taped up, it's got detailed, imagery on it. It reads as money. That's as close as we need it to be. I don't need to know which bills these are. Are they hundreds, tens, 50s? It doesn't matter, right? That's not what's important. So sometimes, or just remember, less is more. It's very easy to get caught up in the reference loop where you're hampered if you don't have reference for something, but you don't always need it. So here he cuts back and we can see through the little the thought balloon flashback, if you will, is him reminiscing of how he became the Shocker. So he starts out, he's just he's a safe cracker. He's a bank robber, and he gets caught, and he gets caught enough times that he goes to prison for a while, and he starts working in prison to develop a vibration tool to crack safes with. And I just love this idea that there's this unlimited machine shop with all the latest tools and equipment and materials and stuff, and these guys get all the time in the world to work on whatever they want, and nobody bothers to check. It's the same way the Vulture's rebuilt his wings and his flying suit like a million times, it feels like, in these prison shops. Dr. Octopus, he's just like, why do these people have unmonitored access to technology all the time in prison? I'm pretty sure that's not how that works, but anyway, he does manage to do it and breaks himself out of prison, but the feedback from this technology is dangerous to the person using it. So he's like, I gotta figure that out. And that's where the costume comes from. And so here we see a breakdown of really how the Shocker's costume works. So he has no powers of his own. The belt is a battery pack. The gauntlets that he wears are what generate the vibration, the vibrations, and he can use those to the gauntlets to direct them in any way he wants. And it's used by his thumb. So it's these thumb buttons that he has to click to trigger, just like Spidey has to push his web shooters to shoot his webs. And so we have this very nice pose of the back to current and the Shocker in his full uniform posing for us. Very nice. So you can see that's why it has this, it's foam lined fabric, these quilted padded costume to protect him from his own vibration powers. So he can vibrate without it, rattling himself to death. He can shoot the vibrations out to destroy things without the feedback hurting him. And that's why it looks the way it does. And again, in today's world, we've laughed at the Shocker and we've made jokes about the Shocker and all this kind of stuff. But at the time, it's a great concept. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, the colors, the yellow and brown, talked about this a million times on this channel. When you see Spider-Man villains, At least at this time, down the road, things will change. But for now, you don't have characters in primary colors for the most part. Your primary colors are red, blue, yellow. Now we do have yellow here, but Spidey's red and blue. So using the color that isn't included in Spider-Man's costume makes a lot of sense. And then the other association with it is brown. So we have the brown and yellow, which I think goes together just fine, but it's not the heroic combination of colors. If it had been red and yellow, we think of things like Iron Man. We don't want this character to look like an Iron Man type of character. Um, Yellow and blue, you have characters like Nova, who didn't exist yet, I don't think. But you have characters like Nova, or I'm trying to think what else is yellow and blue. Batman has some yellow and blue, depending on the logo and stuff like that. But the yellow and brown color combination here really works for a villain. So again, I really like it. More talking head stuff. We get into the Peter wants to move out, to move away from Aunt May. He's growing up. Aunt May wants to move in with Mary Jane's aunt and have, a place for the two older ladies to be together, to hang out. They're best friends. Mary Jane doesn't live with her aunt, and so Mrs. Watson is alone too. And so the whole thing dovetails together perfectly. They go to the local, I guess it's a soda shop, but there's a dance floor as well. So I don't know what this place is. I guess it's a place. It's a diner with a dance floor. Okay. And who's there but Gwen Stacy? And Gwen is dancing, and it makes me feel like this is a way to try to make Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy a little more alike than they've been so far. We've seen Gwen in science class. We've seen her as a serious student. She's beautiful, but we don't see her as a social person as much. Mary Jane is all social. She does not go to school. And so this is a way to sort of bridge the gap between them, which I think the concept here is Peter at some point is going to have to make a choice. There's interest in both girls, but who is Peter going to eventually fall for, right? So they talk about all that kind of stuff. And again, more talking heads. Peter's still thinking about the Shocker and how he's going to battle him again, go find him. And he gets an excuse to go when he tells Harry that he can move in with him. And so he's going to go pack his things. Patch is still following Peter around, and his Spidey sense warns him, hey, somebody's nearby. And he realizes who it is. So now Peter's got to do the somehow, how do I show Spidey and Peter in the same place at the same time? And that's what he does. He makes a web dummy, puts his Spidey costume on it, pushes it away so it looks like it swings away. So Patch, aka Frederick Foswell, sees both guys together. And Peter sort of creates this idea that Spidey gives Peter tips like, hey, I'm going to go try to find the Shocker tonight. Be ready, and we'll split the money for the photos. So that's the concept that he comes up with. It seems to work. It's been a few days. His arm is feeling a lot better. So he decides he's going to go in full strength and not have the arm wrapped up anymore. So he overhears the cop calling in a tip about tremors. He goes to the bank, and boom, who do you know? The Shocker is there. So again, this is a really nice panel at the bottom of the page. I like it sets up the environment. You have these big columns that comes into play. That's very important through the battle. Nice horizontal page to set that tone, set that environment. Throughout these pages here, my notes, I said nice wide panels for action, and it's exactly what we have. So again, when things are a lot of talking heads, people thinking to themselves, you're going to see these old school grids. We don't need a ton of space to show Peter pretending to be himself and Spidey at the same time by lifting and lowering his mask. We don't need a ton of space for Harry and Peter to go, hey, I'm going to take up your offer to move in with you. Cool. Well, go get your stuff. Great. So, but when you have action, we want these wide panels. We want this space. I think it's a great use of it. The reason we see the columns, of course, it's on the cover. Shocker destroys a couple right away, and Spidey uses the debris to fling it at the Shocker. Great stuff here. I talked about this in the last episode, where there's what's referred to as the 180 rule, and we still have John breaking the 180 rule quite a bit in this sequence. Not always, but a bit. So again, very, very quickly, if you have two figures in a scene, these two figures are looking at each other. There's a line between them down the center, and your camera, the view of your viewer, can be on one side of that line. So there's a circle all the way around and a line down the center. I could be on one side of that line, or I can be on the other side of that line. Half of a circle is 180 degrees. If I move my camera across that line to the other side, so more than 180 degrees, I have broken that rule, and now the image is flipped and the view is flipped, and that can confuse your viewer. So, the example here is you have Spidey and the Shocker. Spidey is on the left, Shocker is on the right. There's a line going between them. We are about halfway between them, seeing Spidey kick the column over to the Shocker. We now flip the camera more than halfway around to the other side of that circle. So in essence, our camera was over here before. Now we are all the way over here behind the Shocker's right shoulder. So basically now the camera is over here in this green area. That's too far. We've gone too far around and broken the 180 line. And that's why now Spidey's on the right, even though down here he was on the left. Then you break it again by having us flip again to see Spidey jumping from the left to the right. Well, he was just on the right. So we as the viewer keep flipping and moving from side to side. If you don't understand that as a reader, it could be confusing to understand why all of a sudden people are moving within the panel where you don't see it. From here, this is okay. We are still kind of behind the Shocker a little bit. We can move behind him even more for this punch where he punches Spidey. So now we're kind of right in that 180, and we don't quite cross it from here to here. If we had gone further around to Spidey's left shoulder, from panel 3 to panel 4, I think it would have been too far. We would have been crossing the line. Here, we're close. We're moving from the Shocker's left shoulder to Spidey's right shoulder. But Spidey's still on the left, Shocker's on the right. That's kind of what we still have here. So this sequence, panels 2, 3, 4, makes sense. From page to page, it breaks the rule. Again, this is some good stuff here. I like the idea. He's trying to grab him. He can't grab him because of the vibrations. And he throws him down the escalator, and this is awesome. Now, the Spidey as a superhero, or any superhero, you fling Daredevil, Captain America, Batman, whoever, as long as the character can't fly, they could have, Spidey could have, in Spidey 2, he could have landed on his feet. And then, sensing the shock blast, he could have then flipped out of the way. Totally works. But what can Spidey do that other people can't? So in midair, he's going to catch himself with his fingertips. Again, just with those fingertips of the hand. Crouch, the muscles and the arms are contracted. So that way the next pose of him flipping out of the way is extending those arms and arcing the body. And it's a natural motion from this pose, from panel 2 to panel 3 to panel 4. I think it's terrific. I really, really like the way it was done. This is some great stuff. And what I note, because I've been a Spidey fan for a long, long time. I've read a lot of Spidey comics. Later down the road, we'll see this through this series. John Romita eventually will, and there's artists in between, but eventually the reins of the Amazing Spider-Man get handed to John Romita Jr., John Romita's son. And you can see where John Romita Jr. gets some of his style, his visual language in poses like this. I can see John Romita Jr. drawing this exact pose. And no doubt about it, probably has drawn it a million times. If I looked hard enough, I could probably find it. He's not swiping it, he's not copying it, but it's just the body position, the way the hands are splayed out. It's obvious that he learned at the foot of his dad, and more power to him, because that's a great lineage and a great way to learn. Again, very nice use of panel space for the action that you have. Spidey has flipped over, so now he's landing, and so he's crouched down. He's flipped and landed to his feet, so he's recovering, and the Shocker is leaping at him. So he's horizontal, he's more crouched. Use a horizontal page, but then Spidey jumps to the ceiling to try to throw Shocker off. Right, he's going to go and be in a position that other people wouldn't expect, and then we go to a vertical panel. So that's excellent. It's again a great use of that vertical space to emphasize how that's working. He's going up as opposed to here. They're both kind of going horizontal. And then this is incredible. It took me a few minutes to realize how twisted this figure is. So this is Spidey's right arm. So it's over here, and the Shocker's coming by, and he's punching him as he goes by him, in this case from left to right. So his whole body is twisting while his feet are staying planted. He's almost, he's not 180, because nobody can twist their spine, their waist that far, but my goodness, he is twisted around. So that means that the punch has a lot of power. His body has a lot of torque to it. Think about sports when somebody is throwing something and they're twisting that body around. Tennis, hitting the racket, baseball, hitting a ball, how much twist there is. That's where all the power is. And that's what Spidey has here, is all this power in this twisting motion. That is phenomenal. But part of the deal, of course, is Shocker, as he's vibrating, that's absorbing some of the energy of Spidey's punches, and just his costume alone. The costume is padded on purpose, and that's also absorbing a lot of the power of the punches. So he knocks him into the wall in his desk, and the Shocker just gets right back up. And now here's the piece that I noted, what I say, funny ending. So Spidey finally uses his noggin a little bit and realizes that every time this guy uses his power, he has to go like this with his thumbs. So what does he do? He webs up his thumbs so that he can't bend his thumbs. Now, okay, that's fine, but if I go like this and I hold my thumb so I can't move my thumb, I can still move my hand to hit my thumb. Now, the thing would be pointed up. So he'd have to maybe turn his body so that he could do it. But I just thought it was funny. I'm going to web up your thumbs, and before the Shocker can figure anything out, Spidey finally gets a good shot in and knocks him out. And just kind of notes like, hey, he's just without his gadgets, he's just a dude. But yeah, I thought that was kind of a funny ending. I'm going to web your thumbs basically to your arm so that you can't bend your thumb down, but the Shocker doesn't think to move his hand up to the thumb, because maybe he could have vibrated off the web. Anyway, it all happened so fast. He didn't even get a chance to think of it next time. So here we go. Everything has come up rosy for Spidey. He's got pictures of him beating the Shocker. He's beaten the Shocker. His arm feels good. He's moving out of the house to move in with Harry Osborn and be independent on his own. Aunt May is moving with her friend, and they're going to be able to sell the house and have plenty of money to take care of Aunt May's medical expenses and stuff like that. So the whole thing is great. Now, May is upset because her and Peter are the only family each other have. And it's just upsetting. People, watching this child that you raised, that you think of as your son, grow up, move out. She's crying. It's emotional. And I said, that's really sweet. It's easy to think of Aunt May as a plot device. It's easy to think of Aunt May as just a obstacle for Peter to get by as Spidey. So he has to sneak around, or he has to come up with excuses for why he's hurt or why was he late or whatever. But in this, I'm not going to get into all the dialogue, but what you understand there is that these two are family. They are essentially a mother and a son for all intents and purposes. They love each other dearly, and this is emotional for both of them, but in the end, it's something that happens to every parent and every child, and it's a very touching moment. So it's just really sweet as they, as they part. But this is obviously not the end. Peter visits Aunt May regularly, and she's still a part of the story and still a part of each other's lives. Peter shows up. Harry's got to step out for a minute. He tells him to go ahead and make himself at home. And then, but of course, even though everything has come up roses, Peter is depressed. Like, this guy has clinical depression. It doesn't matter what goes right for him. He's like, something's wrong. And he has to kind of mope about it. So you can't have your comic end without a morose Peter moment. The only difference is he's not by himself in the dark, for a change. So there we go. And then we get our tease that next issue is going to feature Kraven the Hunter. So not a new character, but a return of a fun character. And that'll be a lot of fun to review together. So there we go. So we're going to cut back to the desk and wrap this one up. So there we have Amazing Spider-Man 46, featuring the introduction of the Shocker. Again, a character that in today's world we laugh at a little bit, but if you've seen any of the MCU Spider-Man movies, the first one, which was I think Homecoming, it featured the Shocker as a lackey, if you will, of the Vulture, of Michael Keaton's Vulture. I thought it was handled really, really well. The technology was cool. He didn't have exactly the same costume, which is probably some of what leads to some of the ridicule of the character or the comedy of the character now. But at this point, I think that was a great introduction. It's a neat character. We know he's going to pop up again because it's just technology, whether it's that same guy or somebody else takes on the suit. It's here to stay. So I thought it was really good. Overall, I like this issue a lot. It has stuff that lends into Peter's life, the things, what's going on with Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy. So that dichotomy or that triangle. He's moved out of the house from Aunt May, so we're onto a new chapter of Peter's life. His arm is healed. I really like it. I give this one an 8 out of 10. I think it's a great story. Fun, terrific action. Enough talking heads to get us through the plot, but not so much to distract from what needs to happen. So again, I think it's a great issue, and I highly recommend it. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for your time and checking out this video. Again, don't forget to hit subscribe, click on the notifications, give the video a thumbs up. If you watched it, give it a thumbs up, if nothing else. It's the easiest thing you can do. It's just a click of the button, and it helps out me and my channel a ton. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did, and we'll see you next week for even more Spider-Man. Thanks.